I want to be clear. My understanding is that it's the press calling, but I want to make sure that there are no Candace Owens viewers that are going out there calling any of these relatives that are still alive, because we can find information online, but we definitely should not be harassing her relatives who have nothing to do with her running. And in many cases, don't even agree with her politics. Like this person that I spoke to is a Candace Owens fan, conservative, as many Caribbeans are conservative, because like, you know, on the islands that it's just not a lot of wokeness. I'll leave it at that. You know, why are you gay kind of a vibe going on. You are gay. It's a little bit more of like an island vibe. Anyways, I just said to him, look, we're just trying to get questions answered about Kamala's heritage.
Welcome back, Warriors. It's me, Linda B. Welcome you all. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I have some more information by way of Candace Owens about Kamala Harris's uncle. Yes, Kamala Harris's uncle, and Candace actually spoke with this man. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, watch the video to the end. This is very interesting. Let's get into it.
Begin. Okay, so 2 days ago or 3 days ago, Kamala was asked again about her Black heritage, and suddenly she is getting a little iffy on the details. You can see she does not want to engage in the conversation, and the answer that she actually gives is fantastic. It is just fantastic, and we need to now pick it apart. So she appeared on a show called All the Smoke, and she was interviewed by the hosts, which are former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. I want you to pay very close attention to her answer here. Take a listen.
What do you think when you hear people kind of questioning just the fabric of who you are?
Well, one, I don't listen to it.
Okay.
I'm really clear about who I am, and if anybody else is not, they need to go through their own level of therapy. That's not my issue.
Their issues, right?
My mother was very clear. She was raising two Black girls to be two proud Black women, and it was never a question. You know, it's funny because over the years, journalists, some, not most, will want to talk about it. And I say, okay, if you want to have this conversation, I'm prepared to have it, but sit down and get comfortable for a few hours. If you want to start talking about race in America, you want to talk about the 1/8 rule? You want to talk about what it means in terms of who you are perceived to be and the impact that can have on the rest of your life, regardless of who you actually are in terms of your God-given capacity and the rights that you have and should have. So, you know, I don't mess with that. I think that's other people trying to figure some stuff out that they
got some issues.
They got to deal with it.
Wow. So she just doesn't answer the question at all. Right. So before we had her really leaning into being Black. Now all of a sudden she doesn't even mess with that. I don't mess with that. I don't even mess with that. They need to go to therapy. She's pulling this Freudian technique. Obviously, you know, I've spoken to you about Freud, who was a disgusting human being who essentially gaslit women who were actually being abused by their fathers. So what she's doing is this exact same Freudian technique of gaslighting people by being like, actually, you need therapy. The problem is you. The problem is actually you for asking the question. No, Kamala, we're asking the question because you made this a theme in your bookie book, which we're going to get to in a little bit, okay? So you don't get to now just not address the question whatsoever. Put yourself in her shoes, okay? I'm going to put myself in her shoes. I
just want to say that the fact that she brought up the 1/8 rule, the 1/8, I mean, that to me, that's just very telling. And the fact that she just doesn't want to get into it. And, you know, I've done other videos about this already, and it appears that she has not been honest in her book called The Truths We Hold, more like the lies I told, you know, because that's not being honest. When you have to come up with things and people in the family are going, I don't know that person. We're going to talk about what her uncle said in just a moment. So she's very evasive, and she, you know, and a lot of times, too, you got to think when people are real thick with information that they want to gaslight you on, they really pour it on thick. They don't just say it in a sentence or two. Everything that is considered Black, whether it's washing collard greens, how you cook the collard greens, whether it's how you talk, or where you went to school, or what organizations you joined, they do everything to Blackify themselves and associate going to certain areas and all of that to Blackify themselves. It is put on real thick. in every instance is put on really, really thick. So
I'm running for president of the United States, okay? And these questions keep popping up about whether or not I am Black. Do you know how simple it would be to simply answer the question? List your Black relatives in 4 seconds. I would be like, this is my grandma. This is my grandpa. Suddenly she's a little iffy on the details here. Why didn't she just say, yes, obviously my grandmother is Beryl. Here's a picture of her. She's Black. I'm disgusted with the people that are even calling this into question. Here's my great grandmother, Iris Finnegan. I am obviously Black. Instead, she goes, oh, do you really want to talk about it? That's what I say to each other. Do you really want to talk about race? Do you really want to talk about the 1/8 rule? I mean, how dare she? And the answer is yes, Kamala. Actually, I would like to talk about it. Yeah, I'm actually totally up for talking about the 1-drop rule, the 1/8 rule. Let's discuss history. That's what those journalists should have done. That's what those former NBA players should have done, not giving her a free pass. I would have been like, no, ma'am, name your ancestors. And why are you bringing up the 1/8 rule at all? Let's talk about the history here, okay? The 1-drop rule was actually a legal doctrine in the United States that was used as a means of racial classification, okay? It really dates back to the antebellum period in Virginia, where people of color were considered legally white if they had less than 25% African ancestry. So we're talking about something that was pre-Civil War, but then the classifications became especially relevant throughout Jim Crow in the South, obviously, because of segregation. So they're like, are you white or are you Black? So they needed to know how to quantify whiteness and Blackness. The laws were first officially codified in Tennessee as one of Virginia's racial integrity laws. They wanted birth certificates to just be very clear whether a parent was legally white or legally a Negro, so that it was known which laws in society you had to abide by. What about Indian Americans? Because strangely, she brings up her mom. You would think the first thing she would do would be to bring up her dad. Instead, she brings up her mom. She's like, my mom was very clear that she was raising 2 Black women. Your mother is Indian, like fully 100% Indian. So the fact that the first person that you recall is a non-Black person is suspicious. And regarding Indian Americans, just to be clear, in 1923, the Supreme Court decided in the United States versus Bhagat Singh Thind that Indians were classified as Caucasians, as they had been by anthropologists. They upheld that, but they also made it clear that they were not considered white. So that is probably the answer as to why her mother put Caucasian on her birth certificate. That was actually the legal classification for Indian women.
Yeah, I was wondering that, like, why would she put Caucasian? But going with the history that Candace just gave, that is the legal classification for Indian people, that you just put Caucasian. You're not white, but this is the classification, Caucasian. And then on her father, I think it said Jamaican. So on my birth certificate, it is very clear. I think it said Black. Just say Negro. I need to go back and look at my birth certificate. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I know who I am, but I can't really remember what it said. It says Black. Clearly, it's Black. And they changed the wording because if you go back to earlier birth certificates, it'll say colored. Some will say Negro. Now they say Black. They might be saying African American right now. I got to go look at my kids' birth certificates because, of course, they're a lot younger than I am. But we got to see that things were classified differently according to the times that we were living in. And back then, the 1-drop rule prevailed. And I think it was a very racist rule because it's almost like they're saying, oh, you're tainted because you got to be Black. You got how much your great-great-great-great-great-grandma, there's possibility you got a little Black in you Black. But today we don't do that. If you're got one parent that's white, one is Black, you are mixed race, mixed culturally mixed. Okay, which is no problem at all. And today we don't consider those people Black. We consider them biracial. Or by ethnic, so to speak, because I believe that we're all one race. But I got to get to this part where she actually spoke to her uncle about Beryl, the woman that she supposedly took a picture with, that she said, here was my grandma Beryl in Jamaica. And you can see the body language. Body language is very telling. Watch this.
Remembered suddenly that she did this on stage a while ago, where she got almost teary-eyed and emotional talking about busing and desegregation. I'm going to roll that back for you just to jog your memory. Take a listen.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And
There was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Okay. Oh my God. Guys, so you watch that clip, okay? You're an American. You see she's getting a little choked up, and you can instantly assume that what she means is that she was like a Ruby Bridges. Yeah, like that little girl was me in second grade. I was a part of the second class to be desegregated. Like that instantly signals, given the emotionality of it, that she was a Ruby Bridges. Talk about mining Black history. Well, let me be clear. She intentionally misled people here to make them believe that she was a young Ruby Bridges. This is how disgusting and despicable this woman is. She wanted people to go back in their minds to all they learned about Ruby Bridges, the images of Ruby Bridges having to be protected by police as she entered into that school in Louisiana. She wanted people to go back in their minds to that. That's why she's getting all choky. She's like on the brink of tears. That little girl. So to be perfectly clear here, that little girl went to Thousand Oaks Elementary School in Berkeley, and far from that impression she's giving, she did not live through any desegregation or any real desegregation at all, because as I mentioned, the schools had already gone through that before she was born, literally before she was born in 1947. In fact, the school district had to issue a statement after that performance on stage. And this is what they had to put up on their website for clarification. They wrote, "There has been some confusion in the media and social media around the Berkeley schools and integration due to the fact that our high school was already integrated, as evidenced, for example, by high school yearbooks, which show children of many race and ethnicities at school together prior to 1968. In Berkeley, we only have one comprehensive high school, so it was integrated by default. Our elementary schools, however, reflected the racial composition of our neighborhoods, which, like many neighborhoods across America, reflected the history of segregation stemming from policies which restricted the opportunities of non-white residents." So then they go on, "We recently celebrated the 50-year anniversary of our voluntary busing plan. And you can find additional details here. So let me clarify to you what actually happened in her childhood. There was no desegregation effort like that she had to live through. She was not Ruby Bridges. Rather, what they realized was because of the past in which you had Black people all living in one neighborhood, and this was contributed sometimes because of like red line districting. You had Black people living in one neighborhood. You had white people living in one neighborhood. What ended up happening was that you had schools which were like majority Black and which were majority white. And so what they wanted to do in Berkeley was to be the first to offer a busing plan to turn that around, so that the buses would pick up students that lived far from the white school and bring them over there, so that the schools would be more evenly mixed. That's what she's describing. So after they put and implemented this busing plan, Kamala was the second or third class since they had implemented this busing plan. Nothing to do with desegregation, just an effort to say, okay, we're realizing now if people are just districted according to where they live, you're going to have these schools that are like 85% Black and some schools that are 85% white. That's what it is. So just thinking about the emotionality and how tricky she's being here, again, trying to allude to like some Ruby Bridges scenario.
I really have a hard time with Kamala Harris. I'm just keeping it real. I'm just trying to think, is there anything that she's putting forth that she's being authentic about? Anything, whether it's her relationship with her husband, whether it's her ethnicity, whether it's about, anything. Is there anything in her policy or what she puts out that is authentic? This woman, and it makes me so upset to think that the media, the propaganda is being pushed to support her. I'm telling you guys, do not let your eyes see and your ears hear lies. Satan is the prince of the airways. You got to be careful about what you consume. The media that we consume can alter our very, very souls. Just always remember that. That is insane that this woman is doing this. So I want to get into this part here. I'm skipping through this because it's kind of a long video. She's talking about how she noticed some things in the downloaded version of Kamala's book, The Truths We Hold. And we're going to get into the part about the uncle. So listen up.
I said it gets better because yesterday I was going through her book that I downloaded. I downloaded that so that you didn't have to, because I wanted to send a picture of her grandma Beryl to someone. So initially, when we started looking into the story, my producer had downloaded the book. I had downloaded the book, but he had stumbled upon the picture of Beryl. So I hadn't actually flipped through the ebook that I had downloaded. And so remarkably, it was kind of the first time I was going to the picture segment looking for Beryl. And I realized Beryl's not in this book. I was going, wait, what's going on? This is her book. Where is the Beryl picture? And I said to my producer, like, did we make a mistake? Like, this is definitely in the book. He pulls his up. He has a picture of Beryl. Mine doesn't. I'm going, is this a different edition of the book? And yes, it was. There were actually 2 publications of the book. One in January of 2019. And then 5 months later, in May of 2019, they published what is known as a young readers edition. Basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's meant to be for younger readers, and it's typically more pictorial, right? So they want to change a couple of words, essentially kind of dumb it down to make it easier to read and include more pictures. Yeah, in this edition, they decided to remove pictures. And it's just, I guess, ironic that the pictures that they removed for the young readers later edition were pictures of Black Iris and Grandma Beryl. There were more pictures that were removed, but the family members were all still there, except for Black Iris and Grandma Beryl. I found that to be extremely interesting. But suddenly I realized that I had never flipped through the book that had more pictures than the edition that I was holding. And I started going through them, and you guys are not even going to believe just how diabolical Kamala Harris is. It was just, I'm going to have to just go through this calmly, because I am telling you, as a Black person, it's actually offensive how hard she tried to Blackify herself. And it made me think of the entire Brigitte Macron scandal, because the journalist that broke that story essentially said that what they do when they're running is they publish a book, and that is the legend that is established, essentially, because people in their minds think, oh, well, if it's in a book and a publisher agreed to publish it, HarperCollins published this book about Kamala, they must have fact-checked this, and all of this must be true. People have this wrong perception that if a book is published as nonfiction, that there was some effort of due diligence, which means that everything that you're reading is not fiction. So they do this, like it's like a rite of passage. I'm publishing this book, and I'm expecting everyone to just accept this as the legend of Kamala Harris. I'm going through these pictures, okay? And aside from Iris, aside from Beryl, she also decided to include some other, what I would describe as noteworthy pictures of herself. Like this one, where she writes, "Sporting my fro, summer of 1970.
This picture right here, I'm sorry. I know that's supposed to be Kamala Harris on the left, but that picture looks altered. To me, if you look closely, that the hair doesn't look natural. It looks like it's been altered some way. That picture looks altered to me. It really does. I don't know if you guys can tell, or if you agree with what I'm saying, but it looks like it's been filled in with something, because you can easily alter photos. It's crazy.
But basically, you just know when you go through this that they essentially sat down as a team and were like, we're creating the legend. We need you to be Black. Okay. This was published again in 2019. And they're like, we need that Black vote. Let's make it easy. Give me the blackest photos of you that you can possibly find. Like, to put the caption of her afro is just signaling to Black people, hey, I'm Black, which is ridiculous because there's so many other races that have afros. Puerto Ricans have afros. Spanish people have afros. Jewish people have afros. Mark, my director, is Jewish. He has an afro. Okay. It is not like proprietary to Black people, but she's publishing this because, like, you're just supposed to look at the picture and go, oh, well, she's got an afro. I guess she's Black. She literally wrote that. Okay. Then, of course, if you can imagine this team sitting down trying to process an Aunt Mary or an Aunt Chris or an Uncle Fred. I've been deep in this. Let's also post a picture of you in a jazz club with your aunties and your uncles. And like, Black people will just accept that you only have all these photos because you're like super Black. But then I said, wait a second. She doesn't have an Aunt Mary or an Aunt Chris or an Uncle Fred. I've been deep in this woman's genealogy. Who are we talking about here? These people do not exist. And I said, is it possible that, like, somewhere in the book that she's alleging, probably assuming that no one is going to actually read through, she acknowledges that these aren't her real aunties and uncles? And the answer is yes, my friends. There's a passage about Aunt Mary and Uncle Freddie in this book, The Truths We Hold, which is really just the greatest trick ever played on Black America. She writes this: my mother surrounded herself with close friends who were really more like sisters. My godmother, a fellow Berkeley student whom I knew as Aunt Mary, was one of them. They met through the civil rights movement that was taking shape in the early 1960s and was being debated and defended from the streets of Oakland to the soap boxes in Berkeley's Sproul Plaza. As Black students spoke out against injustice, a group of passionate, keenly intelligent, politically engaged young men and women found one another. My mother and Aunt Mary among them. They went to peaceful protests where they were attacked by police with hoses. They marched against the Vietnam War and for civil rights and voting rights. They went together to see Martin Luther King Jr. speak at Berkeley, and my mother had a chance to meet him. She told me that at one of these anti-war protests, the marchers were confronted by the Hells Angels. She told me that at another, she and her friend were forced to run for safety with me in a stroller after violence broke out against the protesters. But my parents and their friends were more than just protesters. They were big thinkers, pushing big ideas, organizing their community. Aunt Mary, her brother, my uncle Freddie, my mother and father, and about a dozen other students organized a study group to read the Black writers that the university was ignoring. So you guys,
she's making sound effects now. But listen, so that picture, she's going to show the picture that says Aunt Freddie and Aunt Chris and Uncle Freddie. I'm sorry, Aunt Mary, Aunt Chris and Uncle Freddie. Those were not her blood relatives. Those were people that were her mother's friends. And she called them that. They were like godparents. Her mother's friends. Those were, so if someone is reading that book and they're not careful and they're not dotting the I's and crossing the T's, they're going to say, well, these are her Black relatives right here, Aunt Mary, Aunt Chris, and Uncle Freddie. But in the language, it says that those were friends of her mother that she called Aunt Mary, Aunt Chris, and Uncle Freddie. Those were not her blood relatives. But these are these pictures of these Black folks, clearly pictures of Black people that other Black people who don't read the book, who might be skimming through it because we don't have a lot of time, just will see that, think that those are her blood relatives, and they are not.
What can I say here? I am being reduced to sound effects. She wrote this book and she starts the sentence with her family. She's visiting her family in Harlem. This is maybe, she wrote, I have the best family, and shows multiple pictures of an Uncle Fred that isn't her Fred. Why did she do this? It's not her uncle. Okay. It's just not her uncle. It's her mom's friend. And she dedicates so much time to him and the protests. And she's dropping Martin Luther King, and she's dropping W.E.B. Du Bois, and she's dropping so many other people that are Black in this book. For what reason? Because she's performing. Because this is a sleight of hand. Because they quite literally likely sat around in a boardroom and they said, how can we make you Black? I want to see every photo of you ever taken. And I'm going to tell you what in people's minds will just read like Blackness. So we've got Ruby Bridges now in people's memory, being embedded in people's memory. Now we've got this idea of her marching aunties and uncles in Harlem. It's just so unacceptable. It is so unacceptable. After going through all these photos, I made a joke to my producer and director. I was like, oh, what's next? Is there going to be a picture of her just like eating collard greens and cornbread? Is she going to be like, this is me eating collard greens and cornbread? I'm in Harlem. And they said back to me, no, she's done that.
So I got to say, now we're going to get to the part about Uncle. Okay. We are going to get to that part, but all these pictures, all these references saying people are her relatives that are not her relatives. Okay. Then she's going to go into this whole spiel about some collard greens. And I'm sure you've seen this clip about how she cooks them in the bathtub. That is disgusting, honey. I don't put my greens in no bathtub. I don't care how many I have to make, because I've had to make a lot of greens and I pick them myself. I don't buy them already picked and cut up. I'm not saying anything against people that do that, but I think they taste better when I do it. So I do it the old school way that my grandmother and mother taught me. I pick them myself. I cut them up myself. I wash them myself. And I cook mine with smoked turkey broth. Lowry seasoned salt and garlic with a little oil. And everybody raves about my collard greens. I mean, they really, really do. That's how I make mine, with the smoked turkey butts, turkey tails, or whatever. It's the turkey's butt. But if they don't have that, I'll do smoked turkey of some sort. But check this out.
I have a friend who had a Christmas party, Christmas Eve every year, and she asked me to make the greens for a party every year. And I am not lying to you that I would make so many greens that I'd need to wash them in the bathtub. I'm telling you the truth.
So how do you make your greens? Do you put turkey in them? Do you
bacon.
Nice.
I do bacon.
She puts
garlic.
vinegar.
I put white vinegar.
Yes.
I start with, I slice up my garlic. But no, first I chop up the bacon and get all that fat going. Then I put garlic, some chili peppers, and then a lot of water and a little chicken stock. And I let it go for a while before I put the greens in. And then, so you get that going and all that flavor. And then I put the greens in for a couple hours. Then I do vinegar. And then I cheat and do a little Tabasco.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. But Tabasco, of all, I like Louisiana hot sauce, but Tabasco has that right amount of vinegar. Yeah. And that's how I do my greens.
I see why you get invited every year.
The pandering is real. They always do this with Black people, the Democrats do. They always pander. Remember, speaking of hot sauce, remember Hillary Clinton on the Breakfast Club when she said the hot sauce in her purse? And Charlemagne called her out and said, Black people gonna say she pandering to Black folks. And then the heifer had the nerve to say, is it working? Oh.
What's something that you always carry with you?
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you getting information right now?
Hot sauce.
Hot sauce in my bag, Swag?
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yes.
Now listen, I just want you to know, people are going to see this and say, okay, she's pandering to Black people.
Okay. Is it working?
Yeah. Oh, Lord. I can't with these Democrats. I can't deal with them, y'all.
Of course, guys, let's get to me speaking to her uncle, because that actually happened like I promised you yesterday. I said I had a phone call. I was trying to wait for it to happen yesterday. Well, it happened last night. Part one of our phone call happened last night. We briefly spoke on the phone, I would say for about 10 minutes. And I first want to say just how much I liked this guy. I just had a feel like, okay, I'll be honest. I have a Caribbean bias. My former producer made it very clear to me that I have a Caribbean bias because she'd pitch me stories or say Rihanna did this. And I'd be like, I'm not going to say anything bad about Rihanna, or like Nicki Minaj. And she's like, but I have a Caribbean bias. This guy's got a Caribbean accent. My grandma had a very thick St. Tomian accent. So it was just like, I could sense his Caribbean calm. I can't explain to you. And I could just also sense that he was being incredibly honest and forthright. And he was speaking to me. And it was actually very, I guess I would say just beautiful in a way, because he cared about this. He wanted to reach out because he cares so much about Vioris, and he doesn't want whatever is going on with Kamala to make people have this perception of Vioris. And I told him right away that it was never my intention for him to get inundated. So I want to be clear. My understanding is that it's the press calling, but I want to make sure that there are no Candace Owens viewers that are going out there calling any of these relatives that are still alive, because we can find information online, but we definitely should not be harassing her relatives who have nothing to do with her running. And in many cases, don't even agree with her politics. Like this person that I spoke to is a Candace Owens fan, conservative, as many Caribbeans are conservative, because on the islands, it's just not a lot of wokeness. I'll leave it at that. Why are you gay kind of a vibe going on. You are gay. It's a little bit more of like an island vibe. Anyways, I just said to him, look, we're just trying to get questions answered about Kamala's heritage because of her father's paper. I said, I have a lot of questions about your brother, Donald Harris. I just am not understanding anything in this paper. And I went through the holes in it. I went through the fact that, he mentions this person growing up, like they all kind of grew up on a farm together, but you're asking the question, like Beryl married this person. Why is he trying to make it seem like everyone grew up as one happy family? Why didn't he even mention Vioris at all, which is kind of the dog that didn't bark? And I asked him directly if he knew the Miss Iris that he is referring to in this book, in the Miss Iris that Donald J. Harris is referring to in his piece, rather, who he says is Iris Nay Finnegan. Again, very strange, because Iris should have never been Nay Finnegan. Finnegan was her married name. And he said, I can't answer that. I don't know that name. I want to be very clear. He has a relationship with Donald. He is close with Donald. They grew up together. He considers Donald his full brother. He has no idea who Miss Iris Finnegan is. This is Donald's brother that we're talking about. So I said, okay, that's of course of some interest to me. I asked him why it is that he's even then mentioning this Miss Iris. And he told me that he wanted to clarify something which was of most importance to me. He wanted me to know that before Vioris and Oscar Harris got married, Oscar Harris already had 3 children, okay? One of them being Donald. Now, to be clear, he is younger than Donald, a lot younger than Donald, so he wouldn't know much about if there was some family secret. He would not be aware of it, but to the best of his knowledge, like, this is what he was told, that they had 3 children before Vioris and Oscar got married. And I asked him, quite frankly, if he knew or heard of Beryl. He told me he does not know Beryl. Instant red flag to me. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how do you not know? If you have a half sibling that you are close to and have been close to your whole life, how do you not know who their mom is? He said, I don't know who his mother is. You don't know who Donald Harris's mom is. The woman who started this entire thing, Beryl Finnegan, like the person who just flagged me as weird. Something is not right here. We now know that Donald Harris's brother does not know him. Okay. Like I said, he said that Oscar Harris had 3 children before he married Vioris. He mentioned that Donald was very close to them. He also said that Oscar Harris's children all had businesses, that Donald, when he was coming up, Donald was in university. They kept very close to him. He said that Donald has always been very, very private, and he doesn't like publicity. And I find that to be very interesting. But what people, yeah, sure, there are some people who are exceedingly private, and there are some people who are exceedingly private because they have something to hide. And I, again, do not feel that Donald Harris was telling the truth about his upbringing. I think he gave some truths and kind of made it very murky in his Jamaican heritage piece, but some things that were objectively proven to be untrue. He told me that Kamala definitively knows Vioris, that he also knows her. She visited Jamaica twice with her father, and that sometime after she had graduated college, she went down to Florida with her sister and she visited Vioris. So she had a relationship with Vioris. Unfortunately, Vioris did not make her book. And I think we know why Vioris did not make her book. Now, I have no reason not to believe the person that I spoke to. I just felt that he was being very authentic and he was there to simply clarify some things, and that he didn't know the answers to some things. He authentically didn't know. And if he is telling me something that is not correct, then the reason why those things are not correct is not because he's trying to lie, but it's because he is not aware of them. So it leads us again to more questions about Donald Harris. Who is this guy? Who is his mother? Where is Beryl? Okay. Where is Iris Finnegan? Why won't Kamala, who felt so, I guess, close enough to Beryl and Iris to include them in their book, why won't she even mention them as an easy way to debunk what is being said? Why is she even mentioning the 1/8 rule? What are you talking about, Kamala? If you're telling us that your grandmother is Beryl.
So this is insanity to me, guys. I'll leave the full link in the description, but this is insane because Kamala is using her mother's friends as her aunt and uncles, saying her family. Okay, so she said that. And then she knows who Vioris is, but Vioris, who looks white or mostly white, almost all white. She looks not 100% white to me, just going by the visuals with how I see ethnicity. She didn't make the book. But these people that her uncle doesn't even know makes the book. Okay, and this is Donald J. Harris is, and I find that funny that his name is Donald J., just like Donald J. Trump. But anyway, Donald, who is supposedly Kamala's father, had a close relationship with his half sibling, this uncle who was talking to Candace. And she said he comes across as authentic and genuine. He does not know Beryl or Iris Finnegan. the Black people who made the book, okay, who got into the book. And that barrel, the one that they found, died 4 years before Kamala was born. So this is all very murky and confusing. And, you know, the truth always comes out in the end. Whatever's done in secret comes to the light, right? And how convenient it comes to the light around election time. All right, you guys, get the word out. Get it out. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You all be blessed. Love God, your families, these United States of America. And as they always say, march on, warriors.